Hi, and I'm Al Madright. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Al Madright. But you can also find me on a channel known as Fort Nerd, which I will have a link to in the description. Anyway, I'm shooting like this to spare you, having to look at my face, because I'm not very good with cameras or anything else related to YouTube, and I kinda don't want you to see my ugly face. So, beginning here, I'm just going to explain my theory on the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 and Five Nights at Freddy's 4 timeline, and explained why I believe they are both connected. But please do remember, I am not a professional, and I'm not very good, so I have a script here. I'm going to be reading from it, or at least a little bit from it, and I'm going to try and make as much sense as I possibly can, but, keep everything in mind and keep everything in stride. Now, first of all, what do I mean that Five Nights 4 and Five Nights 2 are connected? Obviously, they're in the same series, but I looked at things and I've seen a lot of coincidences, let's say, that just make me think Five Nights 4 happens at the same time, or at least relatively in the same time, before Five Nights 2, and mayhaps, just maybe, may have actually dictated what happened in Five Nights 2. Now, like I said, bear with me, I'm not good at this kind of stuff, so let's just get going here, and I'm going to try and keep my face as out of frame as possible, because, well, I already said that. Anyway, I'm going to admit right now that there are a lot of flaws in my theory. I mean, I'm no game theorist. By the way, hi. The diner in one is much smaller than the diner in the other, and I'm going to blame that on, I could be wrong, or, there's the fact that the kid is scared and running for his life, and that might have something to do with why we don't see the rest of it. Also, the state and names and whatnot of the animatronics I'm probably not going to get right. Let's face it, the reason why I wrote a script in the first place is because I'm incredibly scatterbrained, and while I have good ideas, it's not always easy to keep them in focus. So, my first idea, if you'll bear with me, is that the kid's older sibling is actually his sister. Now, this doesn't really have any effect on the timeline or, anything else that's going to go on, but I wanted to put that out there, unless, of course, he's one of those boys that likes pink and flowers and bullies around smaller kids because it makes him feel more manly, which very well could be the cause. It's got to be a girl. I say this mainly because throughout Five Nights 4, we see the house, and we actually do see a fair number of things in the house. One, it's a very small house. From the way you travel through the house as the kid, and I don't mean in the gameplay section. The gameplay section and the minigame section are completely different, and I don't know why. And that's yet another inconsistency I can't address. But in the minigame sections where you play as the kid, you travel out of his room, which is blue and has a bunch of Freddy memorabilia in it, and you go out into a hallway. Across from that is the room, which is pink and has flowers. I'm going to go off and say that that's his sister's room, and his sister is the older sibling. Also, we see parts of Mangle. I'm going to get onto that in a minute. Now, you go down the hallway into the living room. And of course, there your older sibling, whoever they may or may not be, is sitting there waiting to scare you. Alternately, you can try to go through the front door, which the front door won't open because it's locked, or he's too scared to go outside or something. And then there's the door directly to the left, which I believe he says is his parents' room, and he doesn't want to go in there because that's his parents' room. Well, there's his room, an unknown female's room, the living room, and his parents' room, and we don't see stairs or any other hallways or anything else. I'm guessing it's a pretty solid bet that his older sibling is his sister, but for the sake of argument, I'm just going to say older sibling and be done with it. Now, on to what actually goes on. Of course, the beginning of this whole thread starts innocently enough on Five Nights 2, Night 3. The phone guy talks about how kids are mistreating the Mangle animatronic, and they take it apart and put it back together. Who's to say that somebody didn't think, oh hey, they won't miss this one piece of it or that one piece, and that the older sibling and their friends are smuggling parts of Mangle out. Now, why they'd be putting it back together in that person's room, don't ask me, but, you know, that's as near as I can figure to explain that. Also, he specifically mentions the negative rumors that may surround this or a previous location. And you know what? I'm guessing he's talking about this location, meaning that it's the same diner and all the same people and all the same characters. And, you know, did you hear that one time where that kid got traumatized and ran screaming from Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, or Fredbear's Diner, or whatever they're going to say it's called? It sounds like a rumor that the company would like to squash, if you ask me. Then again, I could be wrong. The real juicy stuff happens on Five Nights 4, Night 3, as we see the kid getting out. He's managed to escape, he's crying, and he's very much upset. But he's seen something. Coincidentally, this could mean that he may have seen a murder, or he could have seen the murderer, his or herself. It could be that they saw, you know, them tampering with the electronics to, you know, mess with the mainframe and whatnot. Or maybe just some other random goings-on that they shouldn't have seen, you know? Could be anything at this point. But later that night, Five Nights at Freddy's 2, you know the drill, huh? So, the next series of events happens on Five Nights at Freddy's 4, Night 4. The kid is locked in a room with spare parts. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this is the parts and maintenance room. It's not the safe room because, well, the only people that would have known about the safe room would have been staff. Unless, of course, the older brother or sister is an employee there, and they very well could be, but I doubt it, has a job there and was explained all about the safe room because they were an entertainer and were putting on the suit. Yeah. Seems like a long shot to me. But parts and service just makes more sense, you know, because, hey, the animatronics can get in there, and the employees can get in there, and the customers can get in there. It's on the map. Everybody knows where it is. But as we can see, the day guard is nowhere in sight, unless the older sibling is the day guard, which opens up a whole nother can of worms. But the day guard is absent, and the children are basically allowed to do whatever they want to do. So my idea is that the older sibling locked his younger sibling in the room and left to go party for a while, just, you know, thinking it would freak him out, and it did, obviously. Five Nights 2, Night 4. Phone guy says that there's an investigation and that the place might have to close down, but it's purely a precaution because things like this happen all the time. Excuse me, do you mean that you regularly have slack-off employees that let children just randomly run around and harm each other? Do you regularly have people that come in and say, you know what, I'm gonna mess around with these animatronics because I feel like it? Do you regularly have, you know, suspicious activity that may or may not be considered murder? Any one of those random reasons, not to mention the kid who was screaming and crying and is obviously very traumatized about the whole darn place, could be a reason for the place to be investigated and or shut down. You know, take your pick. We start again, Five Nights 4, Night 5. The older sibling and their friends shove the kid into Fred Bear's mouth, and, well, you know that much. But Five Nights 2, Night 5, phone guy says the building is on lockdown. No one is allowed in or out, especially concerning employees. There's recently been an opening in day shift. Now, a lot of people have always said the Bite of 87 was an employee after the animatronics had been tampered with. But, you know, it could just be, oh, I don't know, a kid got his head bit open, or maybe everything happened at the same time. You know, when it rains, it pours. Every single thing goes wrong all at the same time, and there's nothing you can do about it because life hates you. Or in this case, at least hates Freddy Fazbear's. Now, he specifically mentions that there's a daytime position open. Well, if the child is the victim of the Bite of 87, that brings out any employees. So maybe for once the company got off their butts and fired his negligent you-know-what, because he clearly wasn't doing his job. He was allowing all kinds of bad things to happen on his shift, his or her shift, and you know what? I would have fired him a long time ago. So, there you go. Also, you know, all that other stuff that goes along with that that's, like, really inconsistent that I can't explain. I'm sorry about that. We go next to Five Nights 4, Night 6. We hear the sound of a flat line signaling that the kid has died. His sibling and their friends say that they are sorry and never meant to hurt him. Fredbear himself speaks and says that he can fix the kid, and, well, one of two things. This means that the kid is now the puppet, or the kid is now Freddy. Specifically Golden Freddy. Now, either of these can fit. Excuse me. Either of these can fit, and it would explain why the puppet seems to torment Freddy and the gang in his first few appearances, because, you know, hey, you were my friends, why did you hurt me? It also explains why he goes automatically after the security guard with complete and utter hatred and instant deathness. Because, hey, you're the adult, you're a security guard, you should have been here to save me, and you weren't. Seems like a reasonable story if you ask me. Also, he could be Golden Freddy. Now, besides the fact that Freddy was the one talking to him, it would explain why Freddy is ghostly and appears in all of the games as this ghostly, lifeless, completely damaged, and utterly unredeemable, unrepairable animatronic that should not be able to walk or do anything, and yet still pops up wherever the heck he likes. Seems like a pretty good idea to me, although there are some inconsistencies that I can't explain, and I'm sorry for that. Five Nights 2 on Night 6. The place is closed down. Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare one in the back, a yellow one. None of them are acting right. We have an event scheduled for tomorrow. Day shift, uniform. Make sure the animatronics don't hurt anyone. Now this, more than anything, is where my theory starts to break down, because this clearly indicates that they are worried about the murders. Or maybe, you know, the fact that a kid got half of his head removed is a serious enough offense to warrant this, which I would say it is. Or maybe both. I don't know. It could also be that because the kid died and his soul was fixed by Freddy, that there were eerie goings-on that just so happened to happen and people noticed it. I'm guessing it has to do with a possessed yellow suit, if it wasn't the murderer. Like I said, a lot of this is completely inconsistent, and a lot of this only amounts to circumstantial evidence at best. But, you know, it's still there. Everything clearly lines up, at least in this spot. And I've been looking over the other games, and there seems to be a clear pattern to how things go. I just can't find anything concrete or any good, you know, useful things to point out that would make it completely solid. I'm not a pro or anything, and I'm definitely not a very good YouTuber, but it's something to think about, you know? I'm going to go, and I'm going to leave the link to Fort Nerd in the description, because, quite frankly, it's much better over there than it is over here. And I hope you've had a nice day, and I hope I've at least been somewhat entertaining for the time I've been here. Thanks for watching.